Hi there. This is a video response to a video entitled "Thinking as an Atheist, Being Selfish is the Most Rational." In the video, you attempt to make the point that someone who purports to be rational is constrained by that rationality to be exclusively and absolutely selfish. I would probably open by pointing out that if that's what you really think rationality is, then that helps explain why you're not an atheist. I mean to suggest to you in this response that you are not simply mistaken, although you did admit to being mistaken. Later on in the video you may remember that you said, "This is not to say that all atheists are selfish." So you backpedaled a bit. You understood that you were mistaken. My point is not to say that you were mistaken. That's already been established. My point is to say that you are 180 degrees off. You're not simply incorrect. You are completely and totally wrong. And I'm going to prove that with your own words. You see, we tend to look at people in terms of the way we think of ourselves. We project the things that we expect, the assumptions that we have, onto other people when we evaluate their activities or behavior. As such, you are projecting the idea that to be perfectly rational is to be perfectly selfish is simply an expression of the incredibly pathologic selfishness of your own point of view. Let me explain. In your hypothetical morality study, one of the caveats that you describe is that no recognition can be warranted in the course of helping this person. That's one of your stipulations. You cannot consider helping this person in the context that you might then be thought of as a good person, a helpful person. You might not receive recognition, you must not receive recognition from anyone else who may see what's going on. Well, now wait a minute. You believe in God. You believe that God is everywhere and that He sees all things. Isn't it true, therefore, that any help you might offer to any such person in need would also be subject to observation by said God? Everything you do takes place under the recognition of what you imagine to be God. Therefore, everything you do is subject to your esteem for how you are seen, and not the way that you actually are. You suggest that the purpose of life is to gain pleasure. I find that a very short-sighted, unfulfilling, and myopic point of view. Of course we're here to help each other. We're here as a community. We evolved in communities. We are where we are because we go out of our way to help each other. That is the human expression. That is what is naturally inside of us. You would take that outside of us and put it in the eye of a God watching over us. Incredibly, you also went on to mention the afterlife. And I find that particularly interesting, especially in terms of this idea of God watching over, seeing everything we do, because it's not just enough that God's going to see it. No, 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 no. For you, there's going to be a wondrous reward, a fantastic, pleasurable paradise of heaven waiting for you simply to act in obedience to He who is watching over you at all times. What could possibly be more selfish? Heaven is an orgy of absolute self-interest projected onto a cosmic scale. It's obscene, it's absurd, it's ridiculous. The only possible explanation for an idea like heaven is selfishness. Why do you possibly expect that the cosmos owes you an eternity of comfort and pleasure because of the way you choose to act in front of this God. What could possibly be a more self-absorbed view of life? It is the absolute expression of selfishness. Everything you believe about afterlife, about pleasure, all boils down to self. I am an atheist. I would not only help the person you describe in your hypothetical tale, I would die for them. Think about that. I would give up the one life that I have. I would choose to undergo a process by which I would cease to exist in order to help that other person. I have absolutely nothing in it. I have absolutely nothing to gain. As you say, no one is watching, and only for one of us is that true, because for you, there is someone watching, isn't there? But for me, I am simply one human among millions, among billions. And my actions derive only from and speak only for myself. Your concern for self seems to ignore the idea that morals, that doing the right thing should derive from here. For you, everything seems to point to here. For me, everything points outward. That is the way that we're different. That is the way that we don't see eye to eye. For you, you think that the world and the universe does owe you comfort, does owe you pleasure, does owe you happiness. If you follow the commandments of God, you will experience a wondrous paradise and a fantastic infinite tomorrow. I don't believe that. And yet, I behave more morally than you do. The idea that you should live your life drinking as much as you want, having as much sex as you want, etc., so on and so forth, that's a tired cliche about atheists. It's a common complaint. But think about what it really says about the way you would want to live if you really knew that God wasn't there. Does that not mean that you would do all of the things you listed if you really personally thought that God was not there? I don't drink excessively. Why? Because you can become an alcoholic. Who wants that? I like my liver. I don't want to die of cirrhosis. Being drunk all the time is not productive to happy life in the long term. Why would I want to go through life like that? You talk about accountability. I find that interesting. Accountable to what? Accountable to whom? Are you saying that you need the idea of accountability in order to govern your actions in a sane, polite, civil way? Does goodness for you derive solely from the threat of punishment or the promise of an eternal paradise? What does that say about you if the only reason that you'll do anything good, the only reason that you'll help anyone in need, is because you think you'll get something for it, or because you think that you'll avoid punishment by doing it? What does that say about yourself? What does that say about your expectations? You describe atheism as the absolute expression of selfishness. And yet you believe that there is a cosmic universal force that watches over everything you do, that is intimately concerned with your every act, and will reward or punish you, giving you infinite attention one way or the other, depending on your every action, your every whim, your every word. How can you possibly not describe that as selfish?